It's pretty simple, really. Skiing makes me ridiculously happy. The way the light dances on the snow, skiing through an old-growth forest with the moss hanging down off the trees, and then you add in the element of risk as well, and a sense of adventure. It's a pretty potent cocktail that's hard to shake, and it's always been there. Yeah, I would say my parents were pretty laissez-faire about growing up, but it was a different era. You know, there weren't car seats.
It was incredible amounts of fun most of the time.
When you're a bunch of high school kids and you're in leather telemark boots and 3-pin bindings, it's pretty sporty. We've got to keep it together, do it in style, and just holding on for dear life. And then when you get to the bottom, trying to act like, yeah, had it all the way. When you're a teenager and you don't have much experience to draw on or no experience in the mountains, your intuition is often going to lead you astray. So luckily, I think we were in an environment where it was pretty hard for us to get into serious trouble.
Growing up in the modest mountains of Vermont, we kind of do the best with what we had out there. And at that time, you know, you don't know that there's bigger mountains, really. And I think that was part of the impetus for moving out west to Crested Butte.
And I was backcountry skiing my brains out and climbing. My brother said, hey, I'm gonna go do a ski guides course. It's through the AMGA. I was like, what's the AMGA? And he's like, oh, it's the American Mountain Guides Association. It hit me on the drive back from Aspen. We were driving the north rim of the Black Canyon in a snowstorm, and I just kind of was nodding off. And then when I woke up, I think it was pretty clear, like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I'm gonna do. Here's the next 3.5 years of my life planned out. Let's do this. When I finally finished my guides exams, the confidence was quite high, and then over time getting surprised myself, but also I think what shook me even more was seeing colleagues and friends who weren't professionals have accidents or be killed.
Most humans were wired the same way, regardless of how proficient we are at other areas of our life. There are going to be areas where we're a rookie, and we are going to vastly overestimate our skills, and we're going to have way too much confidence. So this is a blind spot, a lack of self-awareness. When you're dealing with the Dunning-Kruger effect, until you're highly proficient in an area, it's almost impossible to gauge where you're at on your skills and how much risk you're taking on. I've seen this in incredibly highly skilled people that I've worked with mountain guides, with special forces, business leaders. When we're out of our depth, we're really prone to huge missteps that could have really dramatic consequences. With working with the Special Forces Mountain Guide Unit out of Fort Carson, and they're like, oh yeah, hands down, this is the most dangerous training we do because there's not clear parameters. In the mountains, it's this endless spectrum of gray where you have to constantly be analyzing and reassessing the risk.
Where you're like, take the emotion out of it, even though you're doing something that is totally irrational, totally emotion driven, but we're going to approach it from a rational, logical perspective and have very clear metrics for how we're going to build up to it and do risky things in the safest way possible. I've always wanted to come home at the end of a day in the mountains. That hasn't changed. I think the consequences are bigger because it's not just me being disappointed of, oh, I didn't think it was going to end so soon. I think it's more disappointment that I wouldn't be around to see her grow up, but then also the sense of responsibility that she would miss out on having a dad. She loves to climb trees and rocks and boulders, and we have a little climbing wall in the house. I try not to be heavy-handed with the risk approach. and I try to just kind of hit pause and be like, hey, let's talk through this. And much like with clients, when I try to, rather than correct maybe a technical flaw by saying you're doing this wrong, do this, and getting them up in their head, it's more bringing awareness to it. People see the job as a guide is to get the rope up and get people to the summit or help them ski a big mountain. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the primary function is to manage risk. And it just happens to be in an alpine environment. We're coming home safely at the end of the day. That's non-negotiable. At this point, I've had enough good skiing in my life that it takes a lot to move the needle. For me, the experience is as much about being in a beautiful place with people whose company I enjoy and seeing the rewards for them. That gives me immense satisfaction. And then there's a couple times a year where the conditions are so exceptional, it puts me back to that beginner's frame of mind, and I'm just like, oh my God. There's a tinge of melancholy there too, because sometimes it makes me sad that most people will never experience that in their lives. For me, it's just as good as it gets, and kind of snaps me back to those kind of blissful childhood experiences that are less calculated, but equally emotionally rewarding. Yeah, I'm the risk manager and their alpine facilitator, and everything came together, and they're having one of the best moments of the year, and they're often sharing that with someone who's really close to them. That's super gratifying, really gratifying. In fact, that for me is more rewarding now than the actual skiing or climbing. I think it gets back to that childlike state of they're fully in their bodies and they're interacting with the natural world in a way that quite often was inconceivable for them. The landscape itself was hard enough to imagine, and then to match that with the physical flow state is one of those experiences they'll take with them the rest of their lives.